again to another broadcast. Today I'm going to share with you a brief message based on walking and living in the Spirit. One of the goals of the Christian life is victory of the Spirit over the flesh and a change of life which manifests the righteousness of Christ in us. Now we know that this sinful nature, this humanity of Adam after the fall under the power of sin is weak, asphenia. That's a Greek word for weak, asphenia. So therefore, we have to put that flesh under subjection to that Spirit of Christ. We have to mortify its deed. That means put it to death. The Greek word for mortify here is necro. So the only way we can do that is to allow the Spirit of Christ now, who dwells in us as born again believers. That means we have been regenerated, palingenesia in Greek. We have that new Spirit of Christ dwelling in us, that Spirit of power, that Spirit of authority, that Spirit of dominion. That is the Spirit that has the victory over temptation and over sin. We have to allow it to govern our actions. And when we allow the Spirit man to govern our actions, we put a restraining order. We shut the door on the flesh, resisting it every manifestation, putting it to a point of death. We rendering it inoperative, and that's the only way we can walk and live that life that is pleasing to God. That is why Jesus said in his word in John 15:4 to abide in me, because when we abide in Christ, we'll be a reflection of Christ. Christ was a man of righteousness, holiness, doing the things which were pleasing in his Father's sight, because he was led by the Spirit of God. So therefore we have to make the gospel look good by allowing our spirit man now to have the authority to rule and reign over our life, which is contrary to the flesh, which equates itself to the passions, desires, and affections, which run contrary to the doctrine of God. You see, when we live and walk in the Spirit, it is a deep-seated feeling of conviction that our life is now totally dependent on God. And when your life is totally driven by the things of God, you can't go wrong. But you see, the works of the flesh, which can be seen in Galatians 5:19 and 1 Corinthians 6:9 to 10, which are some of those adultery, fornication, lies, gossip, homosexuality. All of these are the works of the flesh. We have to put it to death in order to be a disciple of Christ and a reflection of what the Bible teaches. So therefore, we have to suppress that flesh and put it under subjection to the Spirit of God. And in that, with the Spirit of God, there is victory. I'm not saying that there is no more temptation when you become born again, or because you're being led by the Spirit. Temptation will come, but God will give us the strength. The Spirit will give us the ability and power and dominion to reign over this temptation. Because even the Apostle Paul was wrestling with his spirit and his flesh. We see that in Romans 7:14 to 24. We also see David in Psalms 51:5. David said, "Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me." David is not talking about he was a product or he's a product of an adulterous affair. He was talking about his whole humanity in Adam after the fall under the power of sin. He was still struggling with sin in his life. So my friend, you are not alone in this. Not because you are born again, that means the evil bias of your flesh is totally taken out of the way. No. You see, the flesh will still rise up to try to have its own way. It will still scream to do the things that it desires. But when you become born again, you have to allow the spirit man, that regenerated spirit with power, dunamis, kratos, power to rule and reign and put to death the deeds of the flesh. Because Bible teaches in Romans 8:8, those who are in the flesh cannot please God. What you need to do is what Romans 8:13 says. If by the Spirit you put to death, by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the flesh, and you will live. Because if you allow the flesh to rule you, you will die. So my friend, I hope this word will encourage you as a believer, encourage you even though you're not a believer, to live a life which is pleasing to God. May not be living a perfect life, but as much as possible, you do the things which are right in His sight. So I pray that God bless you and go in peace.